the Sci-Fi Channel.
Roger, let's head home.
The ship, the crew, the captain, the aliens. Next, behind the scenes of the newest Star Trek, Voyager. The Sci-Fi Channel presents Launch of Star Trek Voyager with host Majel Roddenberry.
You know, it's been 3 decades since Gene Roddenberry's positive vision of the future was first introduced to viewers in the original Star Trek series. Well, the show's prime directive, not to interfere with the normal development of other civilizations. It's appealed to millions. It has also inspired each series to reflect the moods and concerns of the times in which it was made. It is our own 20th century mythology, and there's nothing else out there like it. Well, now there's a new kid on the block called Star Trek Voyager.
I've never seen a Federation starship that could maneuver through the plasma storms.
You've never seen Voyager.
It took quite a while in Deep Space Nine for us to find our voice, to make that show clear what the vision of that show is going to be. But I think we've hit it right off the bat with Voyager. I really mean that.
The masterminds behind the new Star Trek Voyager are unabashedly pleased with their latest creation. But inventing the series was a long and arduous process for longtime Trek producers Rick Berman, Jerry Taylor, and Michael Piller.
It's an interesting challenge. You know, it's the same thing that the crew of Voyager or the Enterprise face every time they put their foot on the gas. They do that, don't they? You basically face a blank page as a creator, and you're not quite sure where you're going, but it's pretty exciting. And you know you're going to face some bumps along the way, and you're going to hit some dead ends, and you're going to try to find your way out of it.
Deep Space Nine space station successfully departs from Star Trek's usual galactic travel setting. But Paramount wants Voyager to get back to Gene's original vision to boldly go where no one has gone before.
Voyager takes us to the edge of the galaxy. It will take us more than 70 years at maximum speed to get back from where we find ourselves at the end of the pilot of Voyager. We're alone out there. And isn't that what Gene intended when he created Star Trek, that it was a bunch of explorers, adventurers, alone, facing the unknown?
Only someone who's been hiding out in Timbuktu could have escaped the media hype surrounding the decision to put a woman at the helm of the USS Voyager. You know, back when we did the pilot for the first Star Trek, I played a character called Number 1. But she was scrapped in the second pilot when the powers that be decided that it wasn't believable for a woman to be second in command. You know, even today, there may be some trepidation on the part of the fans. After all, Catherine Janeway is stepping into a Starfleet position that has always been dominated by strong male captains like Kirk, Picard, Sisko. But everyone at Star Trek firmly believes this is a concept whose time has come.
Despite Starfleet protocol, I don't like being addressed as sir.
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Ma'am is acceptable in a crunch, but I prefer captain. It's a bold choice on the writer's part, but it's an appropriate choice if you think of what Roddenberry designed and what I think he aspired to. It's bold, it's clever, it's unique, and I feel very honored.
For the first time in Star Trek history, a woman will be in charge on both sides of the camera. While the 2 male co-creators of the show, Piller and Berman, still plan to keep a close eye on Voyager, Jerry Taylor will oversee the day-to-day operations of the show.
I think Kate Mulgrew and I both will say, I am Captain Janeway, and we're both right. I bring a lot of my sensibilities to the writing of it. She has brought all of her exquisite sensibilities to the playing of it. It's a very collaborative kind of thing.
Heels up. On screen.
Finding the right actress to play the first female captain of a Federation starship has been likened to the search for Scarlett O'Hara. The first actress cast in the role abandoned ship early on, citing an aversion to long shoot days, of which there are many. And then Kate Mulgrew stepped onto the bridge and took command of the role and has thrived ever since.
I was hired on Thursday, and I came for the makeup tests and stuff on Friday. And I remember, because I had to come into the here, Joe's, right, or someplace. And they all gave me the captain's toot-toot. And it was great. And I just thought, I'm going to do this. I felt welcomed and embraced by the crew from the get-go.
Red alert!
And when I walked on the bridge the first time Monday morning, I felt at home.
There's been apprehension on the part of some fans that a female captain won't bring enough authority to the bridge of the ship. Mulgrew says that's the least of her character's problems.
My concern, if anything, would be her more vulnerable levels of being. Her compassion, her warmth, her need for contact, her conflict, her roots. All of those other dimensions which will enrich her as a woman, as well as the captain. The authority, the power, the presence, her command are inherent.
Close Encounters with Tuvok, Vaylana Torres, Harry Kim, and other crew members of the Starship Voyager. Next. Launch of Star Trek Voyager continues with host Majel Roddenberry.
Believe it or not, I'm the only actor to have appeared in every TV incarnation of Star Trek, even the animated series. For 30 years, I've had the opportunity to play wonderful characters like Number 1, Nurse Chapel, Luoxana Troi, and, of course, the voice of the computer. And I know all too well how vital it is for Voyager to introduce a cast of personalities that will capture the viewer's attention and hold on to it for years. So, let's get down to business and meet some of the crew members on the USS Voyager.
The fans are going to hate me now because I had no idea what a Klingon was. And I turned on the show and saw Worf. This is the night before I'm going in for my test, and I went, oh my God, what am I doing? Oh, there's just a lot of toys around to play with.
Being on Star Trek is just, it's great because you get to play every day.
The goop that we put on people's faces for makeup, the weird sets, the wild costumes, even the visual effects, which are incredibly important to the show, all pale to the characters that are created and the actors that play them.
It's time for the years. We're preparing to be transformed.
For the first time since Mr. Spock offered his logic to the original crew, a Vulcan is on board a Federation starship as the tactical security officer. Tim Russ, a longtime Star Trek buff, is the actor who landed the coveted role of Tuvok. And he's pretty sure he knows why they chose to put a Vulcan on the bridge again.
Given the premise of the show, having the ship having to go so far away from Federation space, I think it may have been one of the few ties to some of the older series. In this particular case, they didn't really want to tie into Deep Space or tie into TNG, so they leapfrogged, I think, to the original series to bring a character out, just so there's some kind of thread of familiarity.
The Federation is made up of many cultures. I am Vulcan.
Ironically, Russ had the opportunity to perform with Leonard Nimoy, the Sultan of Vulcans, in a college production of Caligula. Since moving to Hollywood, he's had guest roles on The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and the recent feature, Generations. But he's utterly amazed about landing a permanent position on Voyager.
I've had pilots, I've had on-air series before. Any one of those things could have happened. And why this one? I mean, it's destiny. There has to be something else going on there.
Star Trek's chief engineers, from Scotty to Geordi to O'Brien, have all had distinctive personalities. And Voyager continues that tradition, only this time, the job is in the hands of a half-Klingon, half-human female named Vaylana Torres. Roxanne Biggs Dawson is the actress who plays Vaylana. And she not only has to master Trek's tech talk, but must do it convincingly through a facial prosthesis.
I couldn't pass a mirror without going through something when I first started wearing this. It was very strange for me. And now I'm so used to it, I find it odd when people look at me as if I'm a strange being. I forget that I have it on. It's become so natural in a way.
Damage report. Shield at 60%.
A fuel line interruption attempting to compensate.
The Vaylana Torres character is written as someone who is openly ashamed of being part Klingon. But the abrasive nature of the species has allowed Biggs Dawson to tap into her own deep-seated emotions.
You can use those sides of yourself that you normally aren't allowed to let out. Those warrior sides, those angry sides, those quick to anger sides, and then balance it with the human, compassionate, emotional side.
Garrett Wang's character is Harry Kim, the young operations officer fresh out of Starfleet Academy. Only a few years out of school himself, the actor's biggest claim to fame thus far has come from playing Margaret Cho's boyfriend on the sitcom All-American Girl.
A lot of these people have resumes which are, you know, longer than my leg, and I come in here and what have I done? I was Margaret Cho's boyfriend on the first episode. Hi! And everyone else is just this expansive resume, and it gets a little intimidating, but it's good for the character because Harry Kim is the young upstart, you know? He's the rookie.
I can modify our subspace communications band to accept the probe as a booster.
As the first Asian American on the bridge since Mr. Sulu, Wong knows comparisons are inevitable. But this heartthrob in training has more important things to concern himself with at the moment.
Well, it's scary because I do have to be somewhat of a role model now. I mean, there are so few Asian Americans, period, male or female, on TV in a status of being seen every week. You know, it's very Margaret Cho and myself, and I played her boyfriend in the first episode of her thing, which is kind of funny.
I'm sorry. This isn't a passenger ship.
Of course not. We won't be passengers.
We'd be valuable colleagues.
19-year-old Jennifer Lean is the youngest cast member on Voyager. Fittingly, she plays Kess, a 1-year-old female from an alien species called the Ocampa.
It's like any species in the beginning of its life. It's brand new to everything, so it adds a different perspective.
Also cruising on the USS Voyager will be Doc Zimmerman, the ship's holographic doctor, the mess officer Neelix, an alien who hails from a never-before-explored galaxy, the handsome Lieutenant Tom Paris, descended from a long line of Starfleet legends, and finally, First Officer Chakotay, the fearless Native American leader of the Maquis. This group is going to be fascinating to watch in action.
The behind-the-scenes artisans of Voyager, from the master of alien makeup to the wizard of 24th century wardrobe. Next. Launch of Star Trek Voyager continues with host Majel Roddenberry.
Michael Westmore has run Alien Central from his makeup lab on the Paramount lot since he signed up for a tour of duty on Next Generation 7.5 years ago. This third-generation Hollywood makeup artist still cooks up the creatures for each and every Star Trek project. He's been working on Voyager since last July, and here's a sneak peek at some of the results.
Felix, good to meet you.
The aliens on Voyager all have to be new because we wound up in a different part of space that they're trying to come back from. And one of our main characters here is Neelix, who's a Talaxian. And with the Neelix character, in my original thoughts for him, and it was the last one I designed for the new show, I had in mind something between, to get the feel of a warthog and a meerkat, with the Ocampas, which is Kess. And the Ocampa ear is a small ear like this that kind of fits back at an angle, at a 45-degree angle, back across the head.
Michael Westmore's aliens are uniquely and distinctly Star Trek. And the reason is simple. Gene Roddenberry wanted his aliens to always possess some degree of humanity so that viewers could more easily relate to these strange-looking individuals. And I believe Michael Westmore is doing an incredible job carrying out Gene's wish.
Our characters aren't really copied, or we're not trying to copy somebody else. With Gene Roddenberry's edict of wanting to see the humanity in the face, we always try to leave something. No matter how big a mask may be, there still gets very thin down around here where if they smile or they do something, it comes through.
Action, please.
One challenging aspect of Westmore's job is showing actors how to befriend their prosthetics. After all, many aren't used to wearing a large slab of rubber on their face during a performance.
Learning how to use a mask is something that has been very exciting for me, because when you're working inside of it, you don't know how much of you is getting swallowed up, how much bigger or smaller you have to make it, but the kinds of adjustments that you need to do. And then as you learn to live in it, it actually gives you liberties to explore things in a much broader fashion.
This is where the process of constructing an alien mask begins. Makeup artist Gil Mosco mixes liquid foam rubber, adds dye, shoots it into a mold, heats it, and hopes for the best. Aha! It's a perfect Ferengi.
The quality of this foam has a stretchiness and a believability. It's not stiff like the older things from the 50s. If you remember old horror movies, when you saw creatures or monsters, they always looked like they were wearing a thick rubber suit. And here we try and make them look like it grew that way.
Every principal alien character gets a new mask each week of production. And when you consider the time and effort that goes into creating each individual mask, it's easy to see why Michael Westmore has made himself indispensable to Star Trek.
We try to get several days' use out of them because it takes so long to prep this, to put the paint on it. Each one of these dots is hand-painted in here with an airbrush, and it takes a while to do one, and we paint up two at the same time.
Gene always said, when we reach utopia, we'll have infinite diversity and infinite combinations. Sticking with that simple belief has kept the aliens of Star Trek the best in any universe. Meanwhile, in the bustling Star Trek wardrobe department, Robert Blackman and his staff have been hard at work, sketching designs, cutting cloth, and stitching the fabric for the Voyager costumes. And they run the gamut from functional to flamboyant.
One of the characters that we have in Voyager, our regular ones, is Neelix, who is an alien. And when we first see him in the pilot, he's actually in a ship in which he's scavenging. The coat is my favorite because it is this very weird fake fur. We only use fake fur. And we do all of this with sort of weird things with soap and gesso and all kinds of other things that make it look like it's old, and then overpaint it and overdye it.
It's good to see you too, Chakotay.
Certainly the hardest thing, which I've said a lot, is doing just the Starfleet civilian clothes. It's the hardest thing to do. And I always kind of get those, oh, pajamas. No, not pajamas. Don't do pajamas on me again this week.
Even Starfleet officers get to unwind once in a while and slip into some off-duty apparel. Viewers can catch a glimpse of Captain Janeway in a pair of pink silk pajamas in one upcoming episode of Voyager.
The point is what I'm trying to do is we see this woman so much in very tailored, very sort of uniformed, mannish, in a way, clothing. And when we get to her and as a woman in just regular clothing, I don't want it to be overly provocative, but I want it to be very feminine and essentially have a certain sensuality about it so that we realize that she is, you know, just an average human being on the planet with the same drives and so on and so forth as anyone else.
Star Trek's wardrobe department is actually larger than Paramount Studios' main wardrobe department. That's because the Star Trek world demands around 1,000 costumes a year. Now, the makeup and wardrobe work are examples of the effort that is going into making Voyager fresh and exciting. Because in the Star Trek universe, the look of the entire show is always a top priority. And as luck would have it, during our visit, Next Generation star LeVar Burton was back on the bridge, directing an episode of Voyager.
Very quiet. Just the words. Just the words.
The starship USS Voyager is an intrepid class vessel capable of holding 200 crew members. And though it's a lot smaller than the Enterprise on Next Generation, which carried over 1,000 people, it's one of the fastest and most powerful starships in Starfleet.
If you look at Next Gen's bridge, it's kind of a wood grain, homey feel, sort of a rustic cabin kind of thing, a cottage, and then you come into here, it's like gunmetal gray, you know, it's very inspiring, you know. And anytime I bring anybody onto the set to visit, first thing, you know, I go, and this is the bridge. I bring them around the corner, and it is like this gasp of like, wow.
It appears there's much to hold our visual interest on the interior of the ship. But what about out there, in space?
Paramount is not cutting any corners in order to make this show fit into a smaller box just because of rising costs. I can guarantee you that the technical effects are the cutting edge, the most advanced, and I think that in terms of the problems of cost, we're very lucky that Paramount has supported this with the budget we've got.
Centuries of
procedures on them? The Sci-Fi Channel. Welcome to the Edge.
The premiere of Star Trek Voyager has generated a generous amount of excitement on and off the set. Jerry Taylor knows discerning fans have high expectations for anything with the name Star Trek on it. But she's so confident about this show that she's already conjured up a dream review.
That was a great story. We think that this is a rip-roaring action-adventure yarn with a lot to think about and a lot to imagine and a lot to feel. And it is very much a pure entertainment.
Maybe I'd do better if I had a little Klingon blood in me.
Trust me, it's more trouble than it's worth.
The Star Trek Voyager cast members are fully aware of the enthusiasm that has been sparked by the introduction of yet another series. But most of them have yet to consider how the show will affect their lives outside of the studio.
Time has to be regimented now because I've got 2 children. And despite all rumors to the contrary, I am a human being in the outside world. And I need my solitude, and I need to reflect, and I need to refresh myself. So I don't want to stretch myself too thin, but I'll do what's necessary for the betterment of this, at least initially. And then we'll see how it goes.
Fans need not fret over Mulgrew's cautious attitude concerning personal appearances. Some of her co-stars eagerly await fan contact.
I like it. It's nice to be complimented, nice to be adored. I've had my share of a little bit too far fan adoration in some other things that I've done where it's been a little scary, I think. But for the most part, yes, I am ready for the conventions.
As an old Star Trek trooper, my advice to all the members of Voyager would be this. Go to the conventions. Go with an open mind and an open heart. Meet the fans. Be yourselves. These people like you. They won't hurt you. Besides, they're paying your salaries. I hope you've enjoyed our behind-the-scenes look at Star Trek Voyager. I'm Majel Roddenberry.
Can an LA cop and an alien detective make peace long enough to keep it? Find out in a full day of future law enforcement. It's the Sci-Fi Channel's Alien Nation Marathon, Monday beginning at 9 a.m. Eastern. Now stay tuned for Quantum Leap, next on the Sci-Fi Channel.